So we've had the job posted. If anybody's interested in coming in and running the camera, and we would be happy to talk to them about that. I know that one of the suggestions or requests has been to set up at these meetings some kind of a Teams meeting thing with it. And although I try not to be autocratic at his job, so although I want to say that I'd be happy to give this a try. We can set that up for the meetings for observational purposes. We can't have people yelling in over the computer because we want to ask something. So when we announce that we're going to do this at the meetings, we're going to have to post something with it that says, by observation only. If people want to call in and it's in the public access part, just like coming up and standing here and talking to us, if they want to come in on Teams and ask questions, make points, we can do that too. So in the interest of trying to, get as much information out as we can, I'm happy to do that. Doesn't really require a vote because the chair makes the call on that, but I don't, I'm not going to deny the other members something that they want. Clearly, they want to keep this world, so. Go ahead.
Who would be in charge of setting up Teams? It's not going to be Chris's responsibility, is it?
Well,
He's got enough going on.
Well, I hate to say it, but who else would it be at this point?
I don't know how to use it, do it.
Yeah.
So in the past, right, so in the past meetings when we use Teams, the problem is, and you can see when you watch the whole, board meetings with Teams, is that it would be one of the select board members has a laptop open, and when you watch the video, all you see is their nose hairs, okay? There's no interaction from the community, and I don't think it's right for the select board, any of us, to be focused on trying to manage Teams and
That's exactly
try to
right.
engage in what's going on. I was working with cable, at whatever that position is, cable access, whatever, on taking Teams, and we were working on getting the software the hardware to be able to record the meetings here and so forth. And by using Teams, have the camera set up, so if someone, again, if someone was watching on Teams, they would see everything going on. They see the board, they see what comes up to the mic, and so forth. No matter what that is, we need a person to manage them. And why I say that, because you have to be able to mute them. You have to, if they have a comment, they want to speak their public comment, you have to, allow them to speak, they have a time limit, and so forth. You have to be careful because that type of Teams, or Zoom or whatever it is we're using, is an open link. So you can get all kinds of people that have a voice that we need to make sure that it's appropriate. So to disrupt the meetings and so forth. And we've been using
1 second.
Yep.
And it should be noted that we would also get calls from people who don't even live in town.
That's right.
They're just like watching it,
That's
cause
right.
some trouble. Go
That's
ahead.
right, you're right. Now, the building committee has been using Teams in their public meetings and stuff, but if you watch those meetings, you'll see that, they split those chores, right? The chair's been running Teams at this last meeting while, other committee members are running other functions of the meeting. That's the only way that can really work. So, as far as recording the meetings go, like tonight with the camera and stuff, I'm just taking it on over the last 2 months. I have not uploaded anything. I haven't figured that stuff out yet. It's a time thing. I have been in contact with Matt. Matt will be going, previous, and he will help me with that a little bit. But again, I think it's hard because a comment was made about we can hire high school students to record this. The problem is we don't have a department head in cable to oversee those employees unless we've got to do it, and we've got enough on our plate. So.
And one other thing I'd like to note on that, when we talk about prior, these are the things I really want to guard against, because it wasn't just about creating a service, but you had members, more than one member, who was on there and had this up on the computer. Not only did they spend the meeting with their noses on the computer, but they spent the whole time typing. And as far as I'm concerned, I haven't gone and looked at it, but it seems to me that at a minimum, it's dancing on the edge of an open meeting violation. We don't know what the conversations. Are they having it with each other? Are they having it with the public? You know what I'm saying? So if we have that, there should be one person who just simply sets up the Teams meeting, people can observe, if they're there on the public access night, then they have a minute to have their say, and, but I do not think it would be appropriate to have all of us trying to conduct a meeting and looking at the computer. So,
we did have one, excuse me, we did have one applicant that applied, or they sent an email in about a month ago, and a half ago, and I asked Chris about it today. So, you know, if it's all right, I'll reach out to that person and see if they're still interested in that position, on what that is. And then see where that goes. And then we can find out if that's going up to the high school, you know,
Well-
recording in that position and so forth.
yeah, so what we'll do is we'll work out the nuts and bolts, but I'm just telling this board, I'm open to doing it, we will do it, work out the nuts and bolts.
But it has to be overseen by somebody other than this board.
Right.
So, which means what? Volunteers.
It's volunteers. And now, is that job posting still out there?
Yeah.
Does it get updated?
I don't know.
Updated, but, you know, does it get back up to the top where people see it versus a month ago? Now it's way down in the bottom.
Yeah.
No one's really looking at it.
I mean, I can tell you on our website, it's still there. Actually, cable TV production assistants and public access TV coordinator. is
That's only
okay.
on the Brimfield.
Right, and I think it's on the state too, last time, right?
Not
Yeah.
public on that, it ran in the paper, but that was several months ago.
Right.
It should be.
So we can do that.
It should be running in the paper now that we're into a new year.
Yeah. Good.
Just to see what else. If somebody wants to work this year.
Okay, so,
I think on that, the IT, we have a great high school. There's a bunch of high school kids in there.
Well, like I was saying, in order to hire anyone to record the meetings, we need a department head to oversee that, and put the schedule together and the whole 9 yards. It's, from some of the work I looked into about a month and a half ago, there's a lot of working pieces. It's not as, you know, it's not like it's a 5-minute thing and poof, everybody. Especially when we have meetings that are happening all over town, right? We've got meetings here, we have meetings in Hitchcock, you've got things happening at the senior center, so, you know, there's travel involved and so forth, and, you know. So I think once we get someone in that position, that what I said was the director, then that will hopefully get everything else going.
okay.
So, if you want to run it again in the paper, I think last time we went for 2 consecutive weeks,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah, I think at least 2
Yeah,
weeks.
so
Yeah.
work for 2 weeks, let's see what happens. If we get interested parties, then maybe we'll continue on and, you know, get someone.
What's
If
the
somebody is
cost?
interested in it, you know.
Again, what's the cost in there? Well, I don't understand. Papers are absolutely, nobody reads paper anymore. Anybody in those positions, IT positions, they're going online.
If they get it online, they're gonna still get that.
Yeah,
same
so-
thing. When we say paper, it doesn't mean that it's this kind of paper.
What are we paying? So let's just be clear, what paper is being paid for that? Is it the union?
We use Turley Publications.
Really, that's only this area. I mean, like, if we're gonna do something and spend that kind of money, I think, like, what's that Monster one, where a bunch of IT guys go on and stuff like, those are the types of, that's what we're looking for. We're wasting money and putting it in this that local paper.
Okay, well, I'll work it out with Chris and see.
What are our options are?
I think we should also, within that job description, put, you know, experience with teams, just, I mean, because-
Yeah, I'm good with that,
Yeah.
sure. All right, we all set?
And on that job description, you should read it, it's pretty long, so I'm not gonna read it today.
All right.
It's actually longer than the select board.
Maybe that's what's scaring people.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, next item up is the ARPA meeting that was held last Tuesday. Now, I don't think there's anybody sitting on this board that knows that I did not participate in that because I did not think that it was legal to do that. And I'm going to give you my argument on that because I think this is a very important issue. If you look at the definition by the state as to what constitutes an emergency meeting, it says for something that was not anticipated, okay? You cannot make the argument that this was not anticipated because we've had the applications for all the different groups that were looking for money, and we kept them until we knew what the water supply was going to cost us. Once we had that, we gave money to virtually everybody who wanted it. At the December 9th meeting, we put on hold 2 items for the fire department, and $4,600 of the money that I personally have recommended for the utility assistance, but lost resoundingly, and that's fine, that's the way this board works, okay? We had arguments by members passionately saying that they needed to get this money for patching the roads, invoke the fact that, you know, we had veterans going over there, the roads were not very well, or I shouldn't say that, they were worn out, let's put it that way. And the board voted to give the money requested to the cemetery commission for the purpose stated, which was patching of the roads. After the meeting, there was a handwritten note, not addressed to anyone and not signed, saying, oh gee, we might use it for this better than, you know, patching the roads. So I went back and I tried to go through the minutes and the agendas of the cemetery commission to see if we could figure out, you know, what it was that they were looking for, what they were talking about. And the only reference to the ARPA money that was available online was the November, I think it was the 16th meeting of the cemetery commission. And the only reference to this was that they were going to discuss what they might be able to use ARPA funds for. So there was, as far as I can tell, and if I'm wrong about this, then that particular commission has either not posted the agendas or the minutes, or it didn't happen. But in any event, holding, you know, the meeting was advertised less than 3 hours before the meeting itself was held, which was, I understand, the Teams meeting. And I question deeply whether the state and the ethics people would say that that was enough time. The money was allocated, so it wasn't like you were going to lose it if you didn't have this meeting. It was just, it would have to be used for one thing other than the other. So it was never a question of we were going to lose this money. It was a question of how is it going to be used. So with that in mind, you cannot make an argument that it's an emergency because the deadline for the ARPA funds to be committed was the 31st of December. You know, we got those funds 2.5 years ago, sometime around mid-2021, I think, right? That sound right? So I'd like this board to do one of two things. Okay, first, I really think it's critical that we rescind that vote because we are going to be audited by the feds for the ARPA money. And I don't want there to be some kind of, you know, I don't want them coming and saying, we were trying to subvert the, you know, the deadline, and, or I don't want somebody from ethics to say, hey, you know what, this did not qualify as a legitimate meeting, which means that you have to rescind the vote, and what that effect could, and I don't know what the penalty would be if the feds looked poorly on what was done. So I just think that we need to do something about that. I think that we need to rescind that, give the money for what it was voted for on the 16th, and let it ride at that. Otherwise, I don't see any other alternative at this point, because I'm not going to get caught by the feds later and say that we did something wrong. So if the board does not want to rescind that, I think this board should vote to ask the question of ethics and see was this a legitimate meeting. If it was a legitimate meeting, so be it. And if it wasn't, then we need to correct that. That's my
So
speech.
if I may, right? So I think let's a little history here, okay? On Monday's meeting, last Monday's meeting, this was on the agenda to discuss. We were going to rescind the vote. First of all, the ARPA funds, when we made the motions for all those funds, we specifically stated on what they're for, okay? So they can't just take those funds and use it on something else. They had to do it on the road.
Correct.
Since that vote we had, it was brought to our attention that they couldn't do the work to patch the cracks as I was led to believe that we could, or, you know, the commission.
I don't want to go too far past your point.
That's okay.
So I don't want to be rude, but I don't want to miss it because
No.
I'm apt to forget it later.
No.
Okay? So who told you that we needed it for patching?
I talked to the cemetery commission.
The commission?
So they sent us a member. They sent us in our packet was a quote for paving the roads of $53,000 or what have you. And then in that quote, there was a line item for patch and crack. So in my conversation with the members, and the way I looked at it is that if we could just do maintenance on the cracks with with that money, and then, move forward with, in the future, paving was a maintenance thing. I was led to believe that we could do that. But then after we did that vote, it's not practical. Okay? That's fine. In our meeting agenda on Monday, we're supposed to have in our packet that Thursday were other options for that extra money. This was going to be discussed at the meeting on Monday, which we would have rescinded that vote. I'm sure we would have talked about it, because we don't want to lose that money. Okay? It's not, what the 4,600, what it was, we don't want to lose the money. And they can't use it for the cracks because we specifically stated what it was for. With that said, when, for the record, we've been telling all these department heads for the last 2 years plus that it all goes for the infrastructure, right? All the money was going for the public water supply. And once we get that all figured out on what's left, then we'll see, everyone send in your requests. So for the last 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I know Teresa's made calls, I made calls to quite a few department heads to make sure they got in their requests. Okay? So to say that they had 2.5 years isn't fair. They had roughly 4 weeks. And where committees only meet once a month. Okay? So a lot of that, was happening behind the scenes for them to get stuff into us. I think the PTO was probably one of the few that sent it, 2 months ago. Okay? So, but in fairness to all the department heads, we've been telling them to just, wait to get stuff done. Now, with that said, when the meeting on Monday got postponed till tonight, okay, on that agenda, we probably should have postponed. I mean, hindsight's a great thing. We should have probably postponed or just tabled everything on that agenda except that one ARPA fund. And that would have been fine. Okay? But that didn't happen. So, to address your concerns about open meeting law, okay? Except in case of emergency, a public body must provide the public with notice of its meeting 48 hours in advance, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays. Notice of emergency meetings must be posted as soon as reasonably possible prior to the meeting. Also, note that other laws such as these governing procedures or public hearings may require additional notice. So what's an emergency meeting? Under the open meeting law, general law 30A, section 18 and 25. Under definitions, emergency, a sudden, generally unexpected occurrence, so you are correct, okay, or set of circumstances demanding immediate action. The circumstances here in this place, according to open meeting law, is that we had until December 31st midnight to make a decision on those $4,600, okay? In requesting, as a matter of fact, we could have still done an emergency meeting on Monday night. We had board members that were willing to meet in person, but we couldn't get that to happen. So then we had to make it all happen on Tuesday. It's that timeline of the ARPA fund deadline that is what our circumstances are that were demanding immediate action. Okay? When we voted on those, we posted in 3 hours, we had our meeting, the agenda that was posted, we specifically stated exactly what we were going to talk about at the meeting. What we were rescinding, what we were approving, the dollar amount, and then what we approved for the next dollar amount item. The only thing that we didn't specify in the agenda was the remaining $310 and change, because that's what the price difference was between the road paving, the 3-bagger, and the sealing of the wall, the sealant of the cemetery. Because it is ARPA funds, we have to specifically state what it's going for. We have to be in contract, or basically the board approves that purchase prior to that deadline. Our office can issue a purchase order, after that deadline, but legally the board votes on what that purchase is. I actually contacted Teresa to discuss all this on Monday and Tuesday, and have a better understanding of why this stuff was in our packet, what we were going to approve on Monday. The two things that were in the packet that came from the Highway Department via the Cemetery Commission as well. So I knew exactly what it is that they wanted. So when we made the motion for like the sealant for the wall, we just have to be clear what it was for. It's a maintenance thing per ARPA request, that it's it's for the the structure of the wall, so forth. So all of that was adhered to in our team's meeting in motion. It's in our minutes that we approved tonight. So that's where we're at. So I personally don't see where there's any violation here as far as open meeting law goes.
Okay, so, well, let me ask this question then. You said that you did not speak to the cemetery commission, you spoke to a member of the cemetery commission. We don't take requests for that kind of money from a member, that requires a vote of the board. I have here the request from the cemetery commission for 4 different things that they wanted to do with the money, if they got the money. None of them was patching the road or doing what's being suggested now. So if what you're saying is that you just took this from a member of a board, that right there is not a
2 members.
legitimate way.
Yep, you're
Okay,
correct.
if you
You're
say
correct.
2, then that's then they're violating the
No.
open meeting law. So you took it from 1.
No. I did not have a meeting with 2 members together. I had a conversation with 2 different members to get clarification on what they requested, because it was in our package that they submitted to this board that we would have approved on Monday night. So whatever was voted on prior to that is immaterial, because they submitted it to us in our packet to discuss and vote. And because we tabled the meeting without recognizing that we had a time-sensitive issue with the ARPA funds to deal with. That's all I'm saying.
Why wouldn't you know that? It was posted on the agenda. I didn't call up and,
So
I
if
sent
we're-
excuse me,
Yeah.
I sent a note out and I said, Chris is sick, he's not gonna be able to be here. School's on vacation, the school is closed. What would you like to do? Do you wanna move it out? Do you wanna, and every single member said, yeah, I'm okay moving it out. So
And I
if
did
you
too.
read the,
I
yeah,
did
and if
too.
you read the agenda and you saw what was on there, why would that be an issue? Why would that be a question? You know what I mean? All right, look at, we can go round and round all night long about this, so I'm gonna make a suggestion.
If you don't mind,
Yeah.
excuse me for 1 minute, okay? You are correct. You sent an email, a text message to all the board members, which asking about moving the meeting, okay? And out of respect and the fact of violation of a meeting law, because I didn't want to get into conversation, okay?
But I did caution, I thought it would be.
Yep, right, and I was there. So I stated, and you're right, on the group text that went to all the members, I replied I was fine with moving the meeting. But in a private text to you, I mentioned, before the decision was made, could you tell me today, on tonight's agenda, are 2 ARPA fund items that we would need to approve by the 31st, I'm assuming? Okay? So in other words, I was asking you, do we need to, because I didn't know what were those 2 items. One was the PTO, which I reached out to them to get clarification because I was concerned, and I didn't know what the cemetery commission was. That text, I did not hear back from you. Okay. Then that group text came out saying that we postponed the meeting. I sent another text to you privately, okay? Just saw your group text. How are we handling these remaining ARPA funds? I didn't hear anything back. Is why that showed concern for myself and other board members, and why we took the actions and kept you in loop, wanting you to be part of this, to move it along. From everything that we read, we're in the right to do so. That's all. That's all.
Okay, so here's my response to that. If you are so convinced that what you did was okay, then you won't be concerned about getting an opinion from the Ethics Commission on it to make sure we haven't violated the law. Is that fair? Does everybody support that? We need an opinion, because I don't know if there would be a penalty on the other end. Better to know than to suffer the surprise of something. All right, so, okay, so we will send a note to Ethics and we'll see what your opinion on this is. All right, next up. We received about a 30-page report on the air quality at the annex. I don't know whether or not, did everybody see it and read it? Okay. So I did not put it on for a full discussion tonight, just to acknowledge that we have it, it's in the office. If you have not read it, please do so. There were recommendations for short-term and long-term solutions to the building, none of which involved saying there was any kind of health hazard, just ways to keep the thing under control, closing up the fireplace in one place, closing up the open well in another spot, keeping the dehumidifier going, and things of that sort. So I would encourage everyone to please read through that, see what it says, and once everybody's had a chance to do that, if you will send a quick email to Chris, just saying, I'm good to go with this. As soon as everybody is ready, we'll bring it in, we'll talk about it. Honestly, most of what's in the report is stuff that we're doing now anyway, so it doesn't really make too much of a difference,
But I
it
think-
is something we should talk about.
Yeah, I think those in the building, I think
Absolutely.
this should definitely be on
The next agenda.
Okay. I've read it also.
Yeah.
Anybody, has it, please do so, and if everybody's ready by the next meeting, then it will be on the next agenda. Yes.
Are we talking to the employees there?
Are we talking about what?
Is anyone talking to the employees? I know it's a reporters. Is anybody talking to the employees, how they're feeling, what's
Yes.
going on? I want to know.
I've spoken to almost everybody in there.
Have you given us a report then?
No.
How are we supposed to know this stuff, Mr. Chairman?
Well, you could go and ask a
How
few
are we supposed
questions
to know this
yourself,
stuff?
because you're an active member of the board. If you have a question, please go ask the employees. It's not my job to hold your hand for you on that. If you have a question, if you think that that's a concern,
This is
you are
a big
free.
concern. It's a big concern. I've dealt with a situation like this before in the past in the city of Mobile, and air quality stuff this seems to minimize a lot of the stuff that's going on in there. And I feel that we need to really dig into this and speak to all the employees and have candid, how are they feeling being there? And if any of them are feeling, that they shouldn't be working in those conditions, we should respect that and figure out a plan, like we did for COVID. Maybe they can go work from home, maybe we can, I went and I spoke to the Christopher's place, maybe we can, entertain that. There needs to be something that we're listening to the people who are in there every day, not the ones that come in and out and sit there and chit chat and take up time and then leave. But these individuals that are there constantly. This is pretty troubling to hear the wait conditions on the second floor. I mean, like, how long has that been going on?
But
It's
30 years.
So anything can happen at any time. Let's.
Well,
now that
I
we're
would
aware of it,
suggest- I would
now that
suggest
we're aware
that
of
if-
it, let's make something.
I would suggest that if you read through this entire report and see the recommendations, this is not a health issue. This is a building issue. That's what they came up with.
A building with issues, issues that
Okay,
can cause.
all right, let's do this. Once you've read this and you know what's in there, then we can discuss that. Tell you what, when we put it on the agenda, that will be the time to have that concern raised.
If possible, is that list going over to, that report head over to the highway department?
The highway department?
Because if you.
I don't know who she sent it to.
Right.
Sent it to.
Maybe if we
have
just send it over to the highway department.
/ DPW.
If you look at that report, the last page and a half, a lot of that stuff I read, if I'm understanding, a lot of the stuff that Paul would be doing, or maintenance would be doing anyways, so, not that long ago. So that list, it may be helpful, maybe they can look that over the week and just highlight things that, they can do, so we know when we talk about it next week, so we know this is what we can, this is what we can have our department do now for maintenance, and then here's the things that, what we need to get a contract for, out the bid or something like that. Because a lot of the short-term stuff is, like Anthony's saying, and Mark's saying too, is that we've been doing some of that stuff. In the last several months, we've been, we had that mold, remediation company came in, and we bought air purifiers, we bought commercial grade dehumidifiers and stuff that are being happening. But I don't, again, in that report, when you read it, are we making sure they're getting emptied on a regular basis? Are we cleaning filters? Are we doing all that stuff? So that, a lot of it would come from the maintenance, so if we can send that, that would be helpful. And that would move that along, so we're not going from meeting to meeting to meeting.
I believe it was just shared from the Board of Health, shared with this board.
Okay, so if we can just send that to them so they can see it, and Zach can get back to us.
Yeah, but for the next meeting.
For the next, which would be
next
Monday,
meeting, yeah.
which would be a week.
And another thing too, on this stuff, who's emptying out? Who's gonna be emptying all this stuff?
I think-
They only have one maintenance guy in town.
Right, well, Paul is our building, but yeah. So that's, again, that would be helpful, what that schedule is, what they're doing, so we know it's being addressed. And that way our employees know that we're taking care of it. So, help that.
Okay, we'll do it for the next meeting. Moving along, we have two folks who are sadly sat to all of this. If you want to come up, so if you have something to say, we'll be able to hear you, but you don't have to if you don't want to.
I was more just coming to listen in. I didn't know what the discussion was going to be. But I'm
Really,
going to
the only thing, all right,
so I can hear better.
So the reason I put it on here was because I wanted the rest of the board to understand what that process is. You, I believe, I don't know who received it. Who got the email from the building inspector, you know?
Well, it sent it to you guys, and
Well, we were copied on it, but it was actually addressed to somebody
Oh, was
in
it?
your group, yeah.
No, I think it was directly to us.
I thought it was directly to you
You
guys.
can't tell me he copied us on it.
No, it was directly to us.
I saw it, so I.
I
Yes, he,
forwarded it to Jessica.
yes.
Okay. All right. So we just wanted to make sure that you're clear on all of the stuff that he put in there. Did you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions on that?
Well, I did just more of a comment. Historically, we asked, for example, the company who was installing the preschool slide.
Say that, I'm sorry.
The company who would be installing the preschool slide, we had asked them, hey, do you guys require permits? And he said in his 12 years, he's only maybe done one. And so with the comment regarding, not having any permits for anything that's on the playground right now,
Yeah.
I'm not super surprised because it sounds like that wasn't the case thing. But, yeah.
Well, the building inspectors, I spoke with him a little bit on it because I happened to run into him in the annex. And he was saying that, his concern obviously is, we're talking about kids and their parents and whatnot. We want to make sure everything is done properly, right, safely, that things like handicap access is addressed with this. He wanted you to know that you need to get a building permit, but we are the ones that have to apply for that, okay? You can't.
That was so I had reached out to Brian Ledbetter
Yeah.
and asked, because I'm not the owner, I'm not
No, you're not.
anything here.
Right, you're accurate on that. This board would have to, once all the information is put together, we would have to apply for that with the building inspector. We are the custodians of the property, if you will.
And just so that you know, as soon as we got this email, I did immediately reach out to the inspector to figure out what this board can do to help you. And I've also, I think, asked that, any questions that you have on that list that he's supplied us, I'm asking him to be helpful with you on this. We don't want to stall this, we just want to make sure it's done the right way. And I've yet to get a response, so just know that.
Yeah, I apologize. I was just looking at that. When I spoke to him, he said, oh yeah, I sent it out to them and I copied you guys on it. So I said, okay. So I didn't even look at the address. I just assumed we were copied on it. So I knew we had it. I knew you guys had it. So that was it. I wanted the board to see what the requirements were that he was listing here, and
Well,
and to let you folks know. Go ahead.
I don't want to drop this, because, yes, this is on the agenda, but who is it PTO that is following through with this? Is it the school? Is it the district? Who's following through with this?
So I had reached out asking about next steps, and they weren't sure if they needed permits or not, so that's why James Chislick, who was the other person who was coming to the meetings before, he's the one that called the building inspector and submitted all the documents that we had, all the plans that we have from the vendors. And then that was the result, the email was a result of that.
The email was a result of the initial paperwork.
Yes, it was an initial, I think like a flash drive of everything that we had regarding or around this project. But,
The company that you have, they're gonna take the old stuff down and put the new stuff up, or
And then taking it away.
how are they working?
so we had talked to the DPW about having
That
help.
department, DPW
Yes.
thank you.
All of it, sorry. And they had said that they would be able to help with the removal of the old equipment, which there's no one that's coming out and being replaced as the preschool slide structure. Another one is coming out for good and not being replaced. But they said that they were going to help with that.
Because when I read it, when I got the email, it says workers' comp affidavit.
That wouldn't come from them.
No, that has to come from the company usually that's gonna be installing.
Right, so I'm assuming since it was, so you guys have said a community build has been done before in this town, and I imagine that it was, they're not employed, so it'd be a waiver of.
That's what I guess I'm getting at. The company that's gonna come out here, so our highway department takes what needs to be taken out. This company comes in and drops it in place, where it's going, or just drops it to?
They're gonna deliver it to the highway.
Right, we have to, well, not we, but somebody's gonna put it all together
Volunteers.
and
Volunteers with the highway department.
put it in. So I mean, some of this stuff isn't gonna be able to, it's
And,
gonna
yeah,
have to be weighed.
And then the
Well,
building.
this is the problem. As I said when we awarded the ARPA funds for this project, the one thing that is, I think is that last item on their list, is that shade thing. And that there is different, you know, I'm assuming it's kind of like a gazebo or a pavilion or something like that. So there has to be something there. That's where that's not gonna be installed, I'm assuming, by volunteers, I don't know. And he may, because it's not an existing structure, so there has to be footings put in place, there's gonna, you know, how's it getting anchored to the ground, I don't know what it looks like. So that's probably, because that's how our building inspector is following the codes. That's, you know, because this is commercial, right, not residential. So you're right, a lot of the equipment that's there, if we're upgrading stuff, it's volunteers taking stuff down, putting it back up. This is something different because.
That one
well, it's a single post, it's not, I don't see it as very different than the rest of it that's being installed.
I don't know what it looks like. Again, you know, at the end of the day, if it's something providing shade, I mean, is it just one post and an umbrella and everybody stands underneath it? Is it
Yes,
that
and it's
dugout
cantilever
or-
fabric. Yeah, there was a picture of it in the application.
Yeah. So again, I'm not the building inspector, so I don't know